Bible prophecy is active and unfolding daily. Zechariah 12, Isaiah 17, Psalm 83, Ezekiel 38. Here is what the LameStream Media is not telling you.
Shalom, my friends. Welcome to this week's newscast. Last week, I reported on the arrest of Salah Abdeslam, who was a key component in the planning of ISIS attacks in Paris last year. And hours after I posted last week's newscast, reports came in of ISIS retaliating. From the Washington Post, ISIS suicide bombers brought terror, chaos, and bloodshed to the city of Brussels at the heart of European unity last Tuesday, detonating their nail-spewing bombs at an airport departures hall and on a subway train, in attacks that left at least 31 people dead. This event has added Brussels to the growing list of European capitals that have been struck in the past year by deadly attacks either perpetrated or inspired by ISIS. The day's violence represented the worst on Belgian soil since World War II. The attackers first struck with twin bombings at the international airport, where early morning travelers were preparing to board flights linking Brussels to cities across the continent and around the world. An hour later, a subway car transiting beneath the modernist glass and steel high-rises that house the European Union burst with smoke and flame. In addition to the dead, about 250 people were injured. Many of the injured lost limbs, and shrapnel from the blasts radiated through packed crowds. Cell phone video recorded in the minutes after the airport blasts showed children cowering on a bloody floor amid the maimed and the dead. And footage from a subway station revealed desperate scenes as people dressed for a day's work stumbled from the mangled wreckage into a smoke-drenched tunnel. An unused explosive device was later found at the airport. Authorities acknowledged that they had been readying for an attack, but nothing like this. From AP CBS News, the Islamic State has trained 400 to 600 fighters specifically for external attacks, deploying interlocking terror cells like the ones that struck Brussels and Paris. French speakers with links to North Africa, France, and Belgium appear to be leading the units and are responsible for developing attack strategies in Europe. The fighters include Muslims and Muslim converts from all across Europe. A security official is quoted as saying, quote, "Special units have been set up. The training is longer, and the objective appears to no longer be killing as many people as possible, but rather to have as many terror operations as possible." Close quote. According to the latest Europol counterterrorism report, ISIS has shifted toward going global in its terrorism campaign. From NBC News, in the UK, at least 7 terror plots were stopped. In Germany, at least 1 was thwarted. Belgian authorities foiled numerous plots, and French authorities said that they have foiled dozens more, including one last Thursday. But these efforts by European officials have far from curbed the threat from ISIS on the continent. Note, my friends, safety is not the absence of danger. Safety is the presence of Elohim. Now, believe it or not, next month The Temple of Baal, also known as Bel or Baal, will come to Times Square in New York City, and yet another one in Trafalgar Square in London, England. Reproductions of the 50-foot arch that formed the temple's entrance, which for 2,000 years was a world-famous landmark in Palmyra, Syria, are underway in both cities. ISIS destroyed the landmark last year in August, and that action has apparently spurred scholars and conservationists into action. But also, many people are quite disturbed by this, and for very good reasons. In ancient times, child sacrifice and bisexual orgies were common practices at the altars of Baal. And all that, mind you, amid horrific screams and the stench of charred human flesh. Rituals that were intended to produce economic prosperity by prompting Baal to bring rain for the fertility of Mother Earth. And now we are putting up monuments of worship to this false god in the hearts of two of the most important cities on earth? The truth of it all is that many of the elements of ancient Baal worship are being repeated presently in our society today. And considering that fact, perhaps it's only natural for us to have temples of Baal erected in New York and London. According to some traditions, the original Freemason was Nimrod. He created the very first New World Order in the post-flood world, and virtually all of the major gods of ancient Babylon, Greece, and Rome ultimately trace back to Nimrod or traditions surrounding him. And for many modern occultists, the story of Nimrod is far from finished. A lot of secret societies and occult groups have traditions saying that Nimrod, also known as Marduk, Osiris, Apollo, and Baal, will one day be resurrected and once again rule the world. Further, many Bible scholars believe that the coming Antichrist will either be a resurrected Nimrod or will be associated with him in some way. Baal. As a reference to that information, you could look at The Second Coming of the Antichrist by Peter Goodgame, or Babylon Rising by Rob Skiba. Now, with that in mind, could it be possible that we are actually erecting these temples for the coming Antichrist? Speaking of such acts of apostasy, last Thursday I read the book of Yahudah, that is the book of Jude, verse by verse. Now, it's only 25 verses, but that book is packed with some of the most powerful scriptures, especially concerning the apostasy that we see abounding today. If you haven't yet watched my video from last Thursday, you'll see this graphic at the end of today's newscast, as well as a text link to it beneath this video in the More Info section. Please take the time to share with me in the reading of Yahudah. Turning to wars and rumors of wars, on Wednesday, March 23rd, from Reuters, Turkish military forces shelled Daesh, that is ISIS, in northern Iraq after the terror group attempted to attack on the Bashika military camp Tuesday morning. Military sources said that a group of ISIS, Daesh militants, attempted an attack on the camp near Mosul, a stronghold of the group in northern Iraq, but Turkish military foiled the plot by opening fire on them. Then on Thursday, March 24th, from ABC News, the Iraqi military, backed by U.S.-led coalition aircraft, launched a long-awaited operation to recapture the northern city of Mosul from ISIS. In the push, Iraqi forces retook several villages on the outskirts of the town of Mahmur, east of Mosul, early in the morning, and hoisted the Iraqi flag there. From Euronews, Syrian state television reported government forces fought their way into the ancient city of Palmyra. The army has been trying to retake Palmyra since it was seized by ISIS last year in May. Then on Friday, March 25th, from the Daily Beast and NBC News, ISIS suffered a double setback in Syria as U.S. Army troops recaptured half of the ancient city of Palmyra, and the jihadists' second-in-command, Abd ar-Rahman Mustafa al-Kaduli, who was killed. From Al Jazeera, a man wearing a suicide belt walked into an Iraqi soccer stadium and blew himself up, killing at least 25 people and wounding 90 more. A crowd had gathered for a ceremony to mark a championship for a popular local soccer team when the bomb exploded. The attacker struck at Al-Shuhada's stadium, roughly 30 miles or 50 kilometers south of Baghdad. ISIS claimed responsibility. Then on Saturday, March 26th, from the Stars and Stripes, a spokesman for the Egyptian army says it killed 60 Islamic militants in northern Sinai, where armed forces have been battling fighters affiliated with ISIS for 2 years. The renewed offensive comes days after 15 policemen were killed in the same region when militants attacked a checkpoint using mortars. Then on Sunday, March 27th, Syrian government forces backed by Russian airstrikes recaptured the ancient city of Palmyra from ISIS. Turning to our Intifada update, on Thursday, March 17th, from Haaretz, an Israeli soldier was wounded in a stabbing attack at the entrance to the Tel Rumeida neighborhood of Hebron in the West Bank. The 2 Palestinian assailants were shot and killed. A few minutes later, one of the soldiers can be seen in a video shooting one of the terrorists who was lying on the ground. The IDF soldier said, quote, "I did the right thing at the right time in order to prevent anything else bad from happening. He wore a thick coat, and therefore I feared that he would stand and detonate an explosive belt." Close quote. Turning to our review of last week's news, ISIS has shifted toward going global in its terrorism campaign. ISIS suicide bombers brought terror, chaos, and bloodshed to the city of Brussels. The Temple of Baal is being erected next month, one in Times Square in New York City and another one in Trafalgar Square in London, England. Turkish military forces shelled ISIS in northern Iraq. Iraqi military, backed by U.S.-led coalition aircraft, launched a long-awaited operation to recapture the northern city of Mosul from ISIS. Syrian government forces, backed by Russian airstrikes, recaptured the ancient city of Palmyra from ISIS. A man wearing a suicide belt walked into an Iraqi soccer stadium and blew himself up, killing at least 25 people and wounding 90 more. And an Israeli soldier was wounded in a stabbing attack at the entrance to the Tel Rumeida neighborhood of Hebron in the West Bank. And that, my friends, is what the LameStream Media is not telling you. Abba willing, I'll see you here again next week. Until then, stay safe. Shalom.
Crowded rooms, I need more space than I consume. Enough is time alone with you, underneath the naked moon, sharing confidential moods and making chatter. Mockingbird nocturnal sings notations of eternal things, entering the quantum breeze, flying not for want of wings. He lights his gaze on you and me, simply because we matter.